Welcome to Glasgow Cathedral. I welcome you from wherever you may be in the world to this significant place rooted in time and space, an ancient cathedral entering through the Great West Door, a significant door used by significant people on significant occasions. You are most welcome. Come, let us enter the house of the Lord. After that welcome to the cathedral building, it's wholly appropriate for me to welcome you to this opportunity I have to speak about the relationship the Merchants House of Glasgow has with the Cathedral of Glasgow, and that is a long and ancient connection. Annually, or biannually, the house would visit the cathedral for their Kirking service. This is a service wherein we recognise the connectedness of all things that celebrate the common weal, the common good of the city of Glasgow. So within the cathedral, we often look towards welcoming those who are participating in the life of the Merchants House. We recognise the benevolent and good work that they engage with, and we celebrate the opportunity that wealth can bring to some in order to bring benefit to the life of many. In 1650, the Merchants House of Glasgow bought the lands of Easter and Wester Craigs, which stretched from the Glen of the Mollendiner Burn at the cathedral into what's now Dennistoun. The house soon sold Easter Craigs, but part of the western lands, the rocky ridge opposite the cathedral towards the east end of the cathedral, remained its property for over 300 years. The rocky land, it really wasn't able to be developed. So around 1717 in the 18th century, it was walled and planted with fir trees, and it actually became known as Fir Park. In 1804, the Merchants House paid for the improvement of the park. New trees were planted and paths laid out, and the name was changed to Merchants Park, though I think Fir Park was the name that stuck for many. With Merchants Park and the relationship and the geography it had in relation to the cathedral, it clearly became a place of significance and importance to many, especially those who were religiously and spiritually involved in the life of Glasgow. It was in 1824 that the Reverend Robert Stevenson McGill, who was Professor of Divinity at the University of Glasgow, it was in 1824 that he was allowed to set up on the site of the Fir Park or Merchants Park, he was allowed to set up the massive Doric pillar carrying a colossal statue of John Knox. Now that still stands looking over the city. 5 years later, after his 1824 introduction of the Doric pillar, the directors of the house agreed that as the Barony Church in Glasgow had no cemetery of its own except for the lower church of the cathedral, the park should be converted into a burial ground. This was the origin of the Glasgow necropolis, the city of the dead, one of the most extraordinary architectural features of the city, the first, we think, of its kind in Britain. The plans for the layout of this dramatically situated burial ground were a matter of intense public discussion, and the Merchants House, well, they sponsored a design competition for the original laying out of the necropolis. Now, if you can imagine the necropolis and its redesign and its configuration and its aspect with respect to the east end of the cathedral, the issue of the approach to the necropolis became important, because those who approached the necropolis had to go across the valley of what was then the Mollendiner Burn. Unfortunately, by about 1824, this had become rather polluted. It was more a polluted stream than a river running through a dear green place. Now, the pollution and the problems of the Mollendiner, well, they were resolved in 1833 by the building of the, you might call, graceful Bridge of Sighs below the cathedral. This provided a convenient and graceful means of access to the cemetery from the west and from the cathedral in particular. The Bridge of Sighs has that lovely graceful appearance, but it also has that sense of the sigh that many folks may have issued as they entered the cemetery again. So with this rather grand entrance over the Bridge of Sighs, you still have an entry to make from the cathedral precincts and the cathedral environs. The west end of the Bridge of Sighs, is bound by a pair of ornamental cast iron gates, and they bear a motto that comes from the merchant's house. A motto that reads, "So often returning to the same place." True for merchants who were on an expedition recovering precious garments or goods or fabrics or metals. So true also for those who would visit the cemetery with sad and regular monotony. So often returning to the same place. I offer this in English, but on the gates it's offered there by the Dean of Guild, William Brown, who was 1837 to 38, and it's resplendent in Latin. We come here to the choir area of the cathedral, and in this choir area we hold our regular acts of worship on a Sunday and on other occasions. One of the things that's interesting when folks come to the choir is they wonder where they should sit. And some of that goes back historically, because within the cathedral and within many churches in Scotland there was such a thing as a pew rent, where individuals would pay a certain amount of money to have a certain seat in the church. We still unfortunately have the hangover from that, because I think sometimes you can come to church, sit in a seat, then you get a scowly look from someone because they believe you're sitting in their seat. But we haven't had pew rents for a considerable time. So any pew assignation we have now is more symbolic than real. However, when the merchant's house come here to the cathedral, they will often come to sit in these 4 pews. And one of the reasons for that is that these are pews that the merchants had refurbished. They had them refurbished, and at the end of the pew is a symbol of their crest and their motif, denoting not only the fact that they have a commitment to the life, work and witness of the cathedral, but it is a place wherein they come to be kirked and inspired in the work that they seek to do for the common weal of Glasgow and beyond. So you might say these are the merchant's house seats, pews in the cathedral at Glasgow, and they're always welcome to be filled. The merchant's house has had a close relationship with the cathedral, way beyond its significant involvement in the creation of the necropolis, as many of those who were originally merchants in Glasgow have family layers within the cathedral. But even in a more contemporary age, there's a continued connection. Yes, through the kirking that I alluded to earlier, a lasting memorial was created in the form of the merchant's house window, and a service of dedication for this was held in November 1954. The relationship between the merchant's house and the cathedral in Glasgow is a significant and historic, but equally contemporary and current relationship. We celebrate all that is good about our city, and we seek to provide for the common weal, the common good of those who are touched by the life and the soul of a city that holds at its heart a motto from a saint that said, "Let Glasgow flourish by the preaching of his word and the praising of his name." From Glasgow Cathedral, thank you for your visit today, and I hope that you see the necessity, the importance and significance of this relationship we still sustain.